Thank you very much, everyone. We have about 30 minutes or so, and then I will open it up for audience questions. As my father would say, try and keep your brilliance brief up here, and we'll try and get through as much as we can. Mike Duffy, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. This event is how the European Union and the United States can work together to boost production. And so I think it's vital to address what's been one of the elephants in the room, at least for the last few weeks, as I've been in Ankara and other places, and I've heard at these kinds of gatherings a question about what Undersecretary War for Policy Bridge Colby recently wrote. He wrote, "No alternative country or countries can compete with the U.S. defense industrial base, either in quantity or quality. We welcome allies' investment in their own defense industrial bases, but in ways that are collaborative with America's, rather than trying in vain to replicate or supplant it." This has made huge waves. So for the record, for this crowd, do you see increased European production as a threat or an opportunity?
Well, I think what's made clear over the last year is that the demand for sophisticated weapons across the board is so great that I don't think it's an either or. I think that I just came from the NATO summit in Turkey 2 weeks ago, where we rolled out a number of deals that I think demonstrated tremendous opportunity for cooperation between the European industrial base and the U.S. industrial base, and I think that's what we're pursuing. I think we're certainly very proud of what we've built in a defense industry and the capability that we're able to deliver for the world, but that demand, unfortunately, is increasing. Thanks in part to European allies and partners' willingness to respond to the President's direction to increase defense spending, as the Commissioner noted in his remarks. And so I think there's real opportunity here for a transatlantic industrial base. It's not really a comparison between the two. It's how can we work collectively. I think, I like to point to the F-35 program, which is a very capable weapon system, is probably the best example of co-production the world's ever seen. We have tremendous contributions from multiple partners for key systems of that weapon system, and I think we'd look to replicate where can we have a collective industrial base that leverages the strengths of all partners to respond to this tremendous demand that we're all facing for increased security.
Commissioner, there's been a lot of talk lately about capability gaps as the United States very publicly says we are going to go down in Europe and as Europe steps up. Air defense, long-range fires, strategic transport. Is co-production the answer to filling those gaps, and how much time does Europe need to fill those gaps?
Well, from one side, definitely we know what gaps we need to fill, and that is what NATO is writing down in so-called capability targets. So that is what is the basis for member states to look into development of their own capabilities. And we are coming as European Union with what we call financial and industrial instruments to help member states. That's what we were showing till now. And definitely, since we understand and we accept what, again, Undersecretary Albert Colby is calling NATO 3.0 concept, with European responsibilities to take primary role in conventional European defense, we understand that we need to also to look how to replace some capabilities which now are provided by our transatlantic partners. That is called strategic enablers sometimes, or in some other way. And we are really preparing ourselves to do that. For example, some of strategic capabilities are very much related with space services, like secure satellite communication or geointelligence data. We are now building our own systems, like for secure satellite communication, for intelligence data, and that is our answer. The same we shall do with all other capabilities which are needed to be developed. It would be good for us to have more clear understanding, and we are really ready to work together with American partners on their plans and when and how some of those capabilities will be needed to be replaced. But I'm absolutely sure that we shall manage this, change, which is, very much inspired by all the geopolitical changes globally, and we have no arguments against that.
And do you think you have that clear understanding, as you just put it?
Well, for time being, maybe still there is some lack of that, but that is why what was announced by U.S. administration, 6 months review, can be a good opportunity to look into more clearly. And I hope that both of us, we have very similar interests. Really, not to create some kind of chaotic developments, and not to create some gaps at the moment which can be used by our adversaries.
Madam Secretary, Poland is a leader in EU defense initiatives and recently became the first member state to sign the SAFE loan agreement that the Commissioner mentioned, the Security Action for Europe loan agreement, and receive a disbursement. Is this a sign of individual nations taking the lead on certain systems? And what will that kind of money help Poland and as it's distributed to more countries actually produce?
Thank you for the appreciation about the SAFE mechanism. Actually, I was a chief negotiator in the SAFE mechanism. So, yes, we are using 1/3 of the whole amount of money which were put by the EU for the SAFE mechanism. In our case, we mostly decided to invest this money in domestic industry. But the reason why is also that, first one, as we are spending the most among the EU member states on defense, since we are spending almost 5% of GDP on defense capabilities, I believe that we should have also, as a Poland, one of the strongest defense industries in the EU. But the second reason is that we want to, and that's why also I'm here today in Washington, that Poland wants to be some kind of a hub for U.S. companies who want to be present in EU. And if we put more money in our domestic industry, we are more ready to have the cooperation to co-production and creating JV with US companies. And this is one of the ideas that we have. If you're asking about can we in EU establish a moment when different nations, when different countries will have different specialization, I think it's a dream situation, but I cannot see this coming right now, since the idea that we work together also on defense capabilities is quite new inside of the EU. Commissioner Kubilius is the first commissioner for defense in EU ever. So we are just on the start of this process, but we cannot shut our eyes and think only about the idea that we have this division in the industries between the member states. We cannot forget what's going on in Ukraine and also what is going on in the Middle East. So we can have plan for the future, how we can divide and do some specializations in production. But for this moment, we should focus on two issues. The first one is, of course, security, and fill all the needs of the member states and Ukraine for the defense capabilities to feel safe and deterrence. And the second one is also to help our US friends, because it's not kind of a secret that all the, even using all your production forces here on the ground in the US, it's not enough to fulfill demand coming from all over the world and also from Europe. So also we need to help with that, keeping in mind those capabilities which are crucial, and NATO says that is crucial, and this is something that what Commissioner has mentioned, that also it should be a game, some kind of an ecosystem, that keeping in mind the NATO needs, keeping in mind the needs of the US, and of course the security of EU citizens.
And in fact, I think even if we combined the defense industrial bases of the United States and Europe, there still wouldn't be enough production for what we need, which of course brings us to the end of this row here. Howard Bromberg, let me talk to you. So this week, Lockheed Martin introduced the PAC-3 ACE. At the NATO summit, you introduced ATACMS co-production with Germany, the first time that weapon will be manufactured outside the U.S. How much momentum, from your perspective, is there in transatlantic co-production, and how many years away are we from producing weapons together?
Yeah, thank you for that. So So first of all, if I go back to those examples, so the ATACMS is a tremendous step forward with the support of the U.S. government and also with Germany to do that. We are physically picking up a complete production line and moving that, and we'll probably modernize that at the same time as we move that into with our partner in Germany. That's not a small effort. It'll take a couple years to do that, but we're not going to break production either. We're going to continue producing as we transition, so we just won't stop producing one day and then start sort of be a seamless move. The second piece that I think it's important always to mention is there is a lot of momentum below the water that people don't always see, and that's the efforts we've started with global supply chains. If you look over the past several years, we have got a lot of our parts are being built in Europe today. If you were to look at a map, we can find examples. Poland, for example, that builds parts for the PAC-3 missile, for example, and other countries that build significant components as well. So we're not starting from scratch, and I think we have to build on that momentum that has been started for several years, working with the various governments for the right approvals that we need to do that, but I think that's a great point. And I think the next step is the approval of putting a missile maintenance facility for PAC-3 into Europe, which we expect that is a huge step forward. And so I think the momentum's there, and I do think that there's great opportunity that we'll balance that as we go forward. But I want to come back to that supply chain for one perspective, because that is significant, because for all of us collectively, we need the parts. And so if we can bring the parts together collectively, we'll all benefit from that. Thank you.
Well, Juan de la Cueva, why don't we piggyback on that point? How can the co-production that this event is hopefully talking about help not only speed and scale, but also long-term resilience of supply chains?
Well, just to put everybody a bit of context, because when we discuss about shipbuilding, we are all very passionate because there is a lot of national interest always on shipbuilding. But to give you a bit of context, to design and build a frigate destroyer takes around 7 to 10 years. It engages between 300 and 500 subcontractors. And that is if you take out competition. If you add competition into that scale, you will need to add another couple of years. So in order to speed up, you need to anticipate. So first, you need to use the portfolio. So at least in Europe and the United States, there are great platforms and great combat system and great set of sensors and radars that you can use for speeding up and, let's say, kill the design phase so you can start production earlier. Second is, how do you engage with the supply chain? You need to give them time to react. So we are big companies, we can react, but there are medium and small companies that cannot react, so you need to give them time to react. And also, on shipbuilding, we are investing a lot of time in helping them to get into the system. So to make the process, how they submit the information, how do they work with us easier, and most importantly, how do we pay them faster? So that gives you the idea that shipbuilding comes with a lot of complexity, because at the end of the day, you are integrating between 600 and 800 systems into a platform. And there are big companies like Lockheed Martin that we have been collaborating with them for the last 30 years, building ships for Australia, Norway, and Spain. But there are also very little companies of 5 to 10 people that they are not as complex as others. And then co-production, yes, it is a solution. So I think that the co-production, at least on our side, we have built submarines with the French, half of the ship in our premises, the other half in France. We have co-produced ships for Australia, too, building blocks for them or building hulls for them. And we are now co-producing ships for the United Kingdom. So part of the ship is built in our facilities, another part of the ship is built in the United Kingdom. But for that, you need to have very mature processes, very mature system, and a very robust team. And then we cannot forget people, because at the end of the day, it's not about process, it's not about system, it's not about equipment, it's about the people that we have behind us. And I think that we in Europe, at least, we have a significant problem with people and talent. So people doesn't like to be on industry. They are very fancy profession right now, and we need to bring young engineers, we need to bring talent, not just in our companies, but also in the supply chain. And that is one of the biggest challenges that we have right now.
Undersecretary Duffy, we've talked a little bit about Ankara here alongside the Leaders Summit very prominently. Mark Rutte, the Secretary General, led a defense industrial base summit. And we saw quite a few announcements on European-U.S. co-production there. I'm wondering if you could help us understand, what does the Department of War look for when it comes to qualifying a European ally as attractive or reliable partner when it comes to co-production and cooperation?
Well, I think first criteria would be that commitment to the self-reliance, the commitment to spending what's required in order to make that contribution to their own self-defense, and certainly we recognize the partners that have really stepped up in that respect. Second is, of course, an organic industrial capability. That what do they have to offer today that can allow us to move with speed and scale, which is the defining speed and volume, the two defining characteristics of how we pursue success in the defense industrial base. And then third, I think, is a willingness to partner and invest. Are they making not only that commitment to spending, but to building that industrial capacity directly, and doing so in a way that maximizes industrial cooperation across the transatlantic industrial base. So that could include, minimizing protectionist measures. It could include, pursuing what we're calling procurement coalitions to say, you have a federated, a naturally federated system in Europe. Certainly the EU is making efforts to bring that together, but you still have nationalist spend. And so are you reaching out to fellow allies, European partners, to build a viable business case that makes it attractive to industry? Because industry viability, of course, is a major concern.
So, Commissioner, when you hear that list, do you think the EU member states understand the criteria? And also, Mike Duffy raised some of the concerns, protectionism, for example. Do you think member states, do you think the EU are answering those concerns?
Well, I think that, now we are going through some kind of turbulent times. I was a little bit talking about that, changes on European defense structure, global changes. It will take time for both sides, to establish ourselves, in this turbulent development on a more stable basis. We as Europeans, we have several tasks at the same time. Really, first of all, to take responsibility on European defense, primary responsibility, which is a huge task. We are devoting all our attention to that. It means, from one side, development of our defense capabilities, including replacing what Americans will withdraw. We recognize that we were not investing into our defense enough during previous time. We can call NATO 2.0 times, now NATO 3.0 is really demanding. And we need to develop our defense industry. And which means that we need to strengthen capabilities of production by industries which are existing, but also we need to overcome, in some way, historical legacy of structural problems. European defense industry is very much fragmented. As I said, we have 27 defense markets, and that does not allow European defense industry to use the size of big European market to develop its own global competitive skills. Yes, that is a problem. We need to overcome that. That's one of the priorities. And protectionism is really, in Europe and in the United States, some feature which we need to overcome together. Now, I said that we are buying 40% of American production. Americans are buying 1%. I do not think that we are so bad, that we do not have what to sell to Americans. Let's look into that more carefully. And second, yes, we understand criticism of Americans when they are saying, you Europeans introduced eligibility criteria for your European Union programs. 65% of European origin products should be in the final product. Well, Americans have 75%. So we would be happy. We are not going to compete with you on those percentage, but let's let's look really very sincerely into all the issues which are at the moment. And again, I'm thinking that looking into this longer-term perspective, what I was saying, till the end of the century, I understand that we politicians usually, it's very difficult to have such kind of long-term vision. But while all those rising different economies like China and India, in my view, will push us really to find this basis for transatlantic cooperation much stronger and much more stable, with long-term perspective, and that is what should be my wish, to see that development as quickly as possible.
Undersecretary Jeffrey, there were a couple of smiles that you gave during that answer. Care to respond?
Well, I think I appreciate the intent for Commissioner Kubilius' desire to bring together a federated system and build a European industrial base. I also think that those that are spending the money want to pursue the best, and I think that that doesn't mean that the Europeans wouldn't provide the best. I think that they'll make that choice if they're given the flexibility to expend that money in the best way to equip their warfighter and defend their populations. And I think that underlying principle will allow us to best grow the transatlantic industrial base and do it with cooperation. I mean, we rolled out 8 deals without any protectionist measures that establishes, partnership for European production over the last 2 weeks in the NATO summit. I think that's just the beginning of the kind of collective growth that we can achieve. And I think we can achieve it without a need to steer it in one particular direction or another.
Madam Secretary, Poland is among the European countries that's probably worked closest and hardest with the United States to extend your defense ties. What have you learned from that work, and where do you see the opportunities for other member states to, achieve, I guess, the relationship that you've been able to achieve, whether that's defense ties or all the way to the White House?
Starting with this co-production, I think that one of the good examples is the agreement that we just signed like 3 weeks ago between our company PGZ and the Anduril for co-producing Barracuda in Poland. And I think that's the path to follow, to think about co-production in terms of JVs. And this is also that Secretary Hexet has mentioned when he was in Poland at the beginning of the term, that he was saying that the future should be in a co-production. That's what we are following. Of course, what I've learned during the last months was some kind of a threat among the US companies when they heard about the safe mechanism. I remember half of you guys coming, the representatives of your companies coming to my office asking what we can do to be a part of it. But the question wasn't about the money. And I think it's kind of the obvious that money is no longer a problem. A problem is now a sharing of technology. And that was also the question from the main US companies, how we can become to be a EU-recognized company. And the only way is start working with us. And I think the time where also Poland is the biggest client, and we are number one here also to be a part of MFF and also of the FMF, and also we are the biggest client. But I think, and sorry for saying that because it's quite honest, that I think the time that we are only a client is ending. And we need to work together. And the advantage is on both sides of the ocean, that what I mentioned before, that demand among the world is so high that you cannot fulfill it on your own. So we are here to help you, and I think that's the biggest lesson. And actually, when I heard all those voices, even in Poland, that introducing the safe mechanism could be against US, absolutely not. I think the safe mechanism was fulfilling what President Trump was saying. It was EU started to take responsibility for its own defense. And even if we are deciding what to buy, we were following the decision of US where you are moving the troops or moving the equipment. So I think it's all good ecosystem, but what we should all the time remember is that we are the biggest allies, and it's not about the competition, it's about the cooperation. Oh, I like the way that you are looking at me now, Secretary.
Howard, I'll give you the chance to respond to that if you want, in terms of that main point there, and I guess also just briefly describe from an industry perspective, what changes to acquisition, procurement, defense industrial policy still need to happen on both sides of the Atlantic.
Yeah, I do agree. It is about cooperation, but the complexities, and to go back to your question, what needs to change, is cooperation at multiple levels with multiple agencies. None of this is going to be easy, and I think everybody knows that. And also, we're in constant transition in Europe, in the U.S., in industries, in all kinds of companies, in all kinds of ways. So how would we piece that together? To do one opportunity, for whether it be co-production, supply chain, involves at least 4 or 5 different organizations, whether it be governments or industries. So how do you piece all that together to get the right approvals from the right nations, whatever those nations might be, to make the business case that was mentioned earlier, to bring all of that into one cohesive package and to do it cooperatively? I think that's the art of this. This is not a science. This is an art. And you have to work every one of those, and the amount of time it takes to work each one of those is really critical. So bringing together different governments and different industries to form strategic objectives of how to transform together, I think, is an area that we can look at.
So we've got 9 minutes left, so I'm going to say, for those of you who want to ask questions, get them ready, because I'll come to you in 1 second. And Juan de la Cueva, I'll give you the last word on the panel here. You said something really interesting when we were preparing for this. You said, how do we speed up without killing the industry? What does that mean, and what's the answer?
So we normally, as prime contractor, we put all the pressure in the subcontractors. So that needs to change, and that needs to change also by changing the model. So we are right now looking to take things that we normally subcontracted in, and we need to take the pressure on our side. We develop the make, control, buy process, which is what we can make, what we can control, and what we need to buy. But again, it's about anticipation. So we need to give the industry information and give them the possibility to start earlier, because they don't have the capability to grow as fast as we do. And that is a reality. So you can think as a project manager that you're going to flow down all the requirements, you're going to flow down all the schedule, everything to a subcontractor, and they're going to deliver. They might not. And then you cannot charge them. So we as prime contractor, and that is the focus, we need to focus in the delivery. We need to focus in make their life easier, and they need to deliver too. And that is the principle. So we, in our company, delivery comes as first. And we need to, everything that we have set up in the last 4 years, for example, multiplying by 2 the production capability or digitalizing most of the process, is because we need to make their life easier, okay? And we cannot be as prime contractor giving them all the pressure. We are responsible, we are accountable, and we need to deliver.
Okay, very good. So we have a couple of people.
If I may, just one quick sentence. I think that the composition of this panel is a perfect match, since I think in this cooperation we need governments and industries together. It's not only business to business case, it's not only government to government case, it's kind of the combination that we need us politicians to give the direction and also lower the barriers on both sides of the ocean, I think. And then, of course, the industry, which will cooperate with this one. So we cannot forget that we need all 4 around the table. Here we have 6.
Very good. All right, so please raise your hand if you have any questions for the panelists. We've got time for 1 question, certainly, and perhaps 2. I'm being told that there's a question. Let's see, can I just not see them? Oh, there we go. Question. Actually, I see 2 questions, so let's try and get both. So both of them are on this side, yeah. So the gentleman standing right here near the doors, please, first. And please identify yourself.
My name is Saul Anuzis, and my question was with Secretary Duffy, as we're moving forward, as the Europeans have been stepping up, and we're looking at the evolution of how we start working together from a U.S. perspective. I think a lot of Americans are very happy with the fact that the European countries are starting to put in 5% plus. They're working together with us. But what is the realistic, evolution of this change? I mean, it's not going to happen tomorrow. I mean, if the United States moves out to, leaves in 30 days, we have a lot of political ramifications. We have defensive ramifications. We've also signed commitments. I mean, you take a look at, when the Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons, we as the United States helped encourage that, and we made commitments with regards to what we're going to do. So what is the thinking right now? I think the 6-month review is very important, but what do you think is a timetable? I mean, realistically today, what's the Secretary thinking? Where are we moving in that regard?
Well, certainly developing an industrial capacity, both here in the U.S. and Europe, takes time. But I do think we have been messaging this for a while, and so I'm encouraged by the progress that we saw. Again, I'll refer to the NATO summit. I think not only were there great deals of transatlantic cooperation, there was considerable investments that were declared by European nations. About, I think it was $40 billion of drone money to be invested. There was a $1 billion investment in, or $1.5 billion investment to procure the Triton ISR system. And so I think we're seeing a lot of movement now. It doesn't necessarily take that long, especially when we have industrial capability here in the U.S. In some areas greater than others, that we could support increased procurement of our NATO and European allies. But I think urgency is the name of the game, right? So we have actually made a lot of progress here in the U.S., and I think this is something that I've been proud to kind of share with our NATO and European partners in terms of the investment that we've seen from industry as we've changed a paradigm about how we're procuring weapons and how we're structuring our partnership with industry. We recently rolled out munitions deals in partnership with Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, and some of the new entrants like Anduril, Co-Aspire Zone 5, Leidos, others, Castilian, that are looking at tripling or quadrupling our production capacity within a couple of years. And so I think that can be a model that I hope we would be able to partner with European countries to help establish how do we get that industrial growth. And I think it's taking those spending commitments, translating them into budgets and contracts and true commitments to industry to make that investment and achieve that growth in the near term.
I think we've got time for one more question. I saw a hand in the back there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Misha Komodowski, correspondent for Deutsche Welle, a German international broadcaster. I have a question for Undersecretary Duffy, if I may. 9 nations have recently joined the anti-ballistic coalition with Ukraine to speed up the production of Ukrainian basically like Ukrainian generic of the Patriot missiles, anti-missile interceptors, Freya. Is this something that the United States would be interested in? And we've heard this word co-production quite a few times tonight. And what's your assessment of Ukraine's ability to adapt to the new reality while Kyiv is facing shortages in the supplies of the weapons from the United States? Thank you.
One of the announcements that we made at the NATO summit was the establishment of a Patriot sustainment facility that we're working through with Poland, Germany, Sweden, and the Netherlands. And so I think that's clearly a step in the right direction towards establishing production capability in Europe. And then, of course, the president had a conversation in the press conference with President Zelensky, where he agreed to pursue a production of Patriot missiles in the European continent. So we're working with industry partners, with Ukrainian, European partners to identify what's the best path forward in a rapid fashion on that. Clearly, this is a weapon that is in high demand and is sought after by many of our partners. And so I think it's a great use case for us to explore. How can we extend? We're very dedicated and Part of the munitions deals that we rolled out was to increase production of Patriot here at home from 650 per year up to 2,000 per year before the end of the decade. I think that is probably not enough, and so pursuing industrial cooperation with our European partners is a great opportunity when it comes to anti-ballistic missile defenses.
Well, if all of you could help me thank all of our panelists, Commissioner Kubilius, Undersecretary Duffy, Magdalena Sovkoviak-Charnetska, retired General Howard Bromberg, and Juan de la Cueva. And we're going to transition now, so let me